Well, thank you all. And I also want to thank the organizers for putting this together. It's really great to see people I haven't seen in a long time, even though it is just on screen. This would be much more fun if it was all in person, of course. So this session is Trade in the Black Sea, Mediterranean and Western countries, second part. And here we're moving, we'll start with two papers within the Pontic region itself, and then move further south. So our first paper is by Sergey Monakhov and Elena Kuznetsova, both from Saratov State University. And I think both of them are very, very well known to all of you, so I'm not going to say much more. They are speaking on Mendean AMPHORAE from the Prikubanskiy burial ground. So you can go ahead and share your screens, or share your screen.
Hello. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you, and I see your screen. You just need to set it to the right image. Yes, and then, yep, perfect, thanks.
Okay. Oh, dear colleague, this is my first experience of public speaking in English, so I apologize in advance for any possible mistakes. And I want to ask you questions in the chat, if it's possible. Our report is Mendean AMPHORAE from the Prikubanskiy necropolis, chronological issues. Processing of the collection of the Krasnodar Museum Reserve is continuation of the project implementation on study and introduction into scientific use of amphora collections of various museums. Currently, the catalogs of the 4 museum collections, which are the Kerch and Khelsonese Museum Reserves, the State Hermitage and Pushkin National Museum of Fine Arts, have been published. Compared with the collections of the named museums, the vessels stored in Krasnodar are of great number, so their future publication will be divided into 2 volumes. The first volume will include materials from the excavations of only one monument, the Prikubanskiy Maeotian necropolis, which will be discussed here. The necropolis is located in the flatland of the right bank of Kubань, west of Krasnodar. Excavations were carried out under the general supervision of Ivan Ivanovich Marchenko in 1998-2001. 429 burials altogether were examined, where 335 amphora in various states of preservation were found among the various inventory. Burial goods cover the period from the turn of the 4th centuries to the early 3rd century BC. It is more important for us what 100 ceramic complexes have been recorded, 68 of which contain 2 or more amphorae. There are only 5 burials with the 3 container vessels. It is significant that stamped vessels of Heraclean Sinope Phasos were found in 33 out of 100 such burials. This gives us solid grounds for inventory dating. Many of these complexes contain Mendean amphora. It should be immediately noted that we do not touch upon the issue of producibility of such Mendean type amphorae in other production centers in this report. In this context, we are particularly interested in the vessel's chronology. In the following, we will deal with several complexes with Mendean amphora with reliable dating. They are reported sequentially according to the obtained chronology. The first burial, number 167, it contained a Mendean amphora of the tortoiseshell variant. The vessel is noted for a relatively short neck and a very wide and squat body. A Heraclean amphora with the stamp of the early fabricant Erudamus was found with it. His activity is traditionally dated back to the early 4th century BC. Generally, the complex can be dated within the 390s, maybe the first half of the 380s. Burial number 32. Where was a Mendean emperor together with the Heraclean stamped emperors? The legend Demetria is recreated in two-lined hieroglyphic stamp Dio, where Dionysus I is most likely to be the magistrate. His name is abbreviated. Vladimir Ivanovich Katz refers the activities of this magistrate to the 380s. Nikolai Fedoseev dates the stamp Demetriou Dio back as early as the 390s. According to our opinion, the burial complex number 32 should be dated within the late 390s, early 380s. Next one, burial 157. In this burial, two Mendean emperors were found. The first one of Porticelli variant is similar to the previous emperor and should be dated no later than 380s. The second one is qualified as the following Melitopol variant. The vessel of the Melitopol variant is higher with a smaller diameter of the body and tool. From this complex, we can state that the production of Melitopol variant amphora began in early 380s. Burial number 172. There are also two Mendean vessels of different variants. The first amphora is certainly qualified as a Porticelli variant, although with a slightly taller neck. It differs from the early vessels from the above described burials in its elongated proportions, which may indicate its little later production. The second Mendean amphora is clearly qualified as a Melitopol variant. It is practically the same as with variant vessel from the burial number 157. The complex should be dated back to the 380s. Next burial is 384, where were two amphora and the red figured scyphus in the burial. The Porticelli variant of Mendean amphora has a relatively tall neck. There is a delta-shaped relief stamp on the handle. The closest analogies to the vessel are known in a number of representative complexes. The scyphus is red figured with the walls noticeably covered in the near bottom part and a now turned peak trim. There are the draped figures of young men facing each other on both sides. The glaze is thick and shiny. The clay is light brown without visible impurities. According to the analogies from the Athenian Agora, such scyphoi are dated within the second quarter of the 4th century, as it confirmed by the Pontic materials as well. The second amphora from the burial from an unidentified center of production. The clay is dark brown outside with a mass of black inclusions and a large amount of mica. It is red inside. Such clay is sometimes found in facet vessels. However, the morphology does not make it possible to correlate this copy with the products of facet workshops. Currently, analogies to this form are not known. Starting out from the date of the Mendean emperor and scyphus from this burial, the burial can be referred to the early second quarter of the 4th century, i.e. to about the 370s. Next, burial number 266. The Mendean emperor also has got a relief stamp delta in a triangular frame on the handle. The Heraclean emperor with the hieroglyphic stamp of the magistrate Akanthos of the early 370s was found here. The complex of this burial should be dated back to that period. Burial number 277. In this burial, we can see the further development of the Mendean vessel's morphology of the Porticelli variant. The emperor faces a rare Porphyrian series was found with it. The closest analogy is a complete Thasian vessel from burial number 297Z of the necropolis of Starokuznetsova settlement number 2. The Ikis emperor of the late group and the black-glazed scyphus of the 375-350s were found with it, which proves reasons enough to date the complex back to the middle of the 4th century. Particular stamped sample copies of the Porphyrian series amphora of that time are also known, including a fragmented amphora with the stamp of the magistrate Muiscas of the 360s discovered on faces. A bigger standard for such a faces amphora is represented by the famous three-handled amphora from the Tolstoy Могила of the same period. In general, the complex of burial number 277 can be dated back to the 360s, 350s. We can start by summarizing what has been said before about the results of amphora of Mende of the Porticello variant grouping according to the complexes mentioned above. We added other amphora from the Prikubanskiy necropolis burials where there was no other imports to the well-dated and discussed above vessels. It is obvious that the morphology of the amphora makes it possible to place them rather reliably. The numbers of burials containing other imports are labeled in green. The filling of the complex is indicated in red. Burials where was no other import are marked in black. As a result, such a morphological line is formed up. Similarly, we have the opportunity to trace the chronological positions of the Mendean amphora of the Melitopol variant. Several more complexes. The first one is burial number 382. The Mendean and Thasian amphora were found here. The closest analogies to the Thasian vessel are known in several complexes, which dated to the 390s, 380s. These are Kurgan Южный near the village Елизаветинская and the Kurgan Бугробая Могила, where Thasian amphora were found with Heraclean vessels with early stamps. Similar Thasian vessels are known with the stamps of the magistrates Labros and Damastes. Burial number 254 in here there is a Mendean amphora, which is almost identical to the vessel from the burial number 157. A Thasian amphora with a heavily worn out emblem-free stamp on the neck with completely preserved print frame was together with it. Single option reconstruction of the legend Damastes Thasian Chiron is possible. The magistrate is Damas the First. The prints of this stamp are well known and date back to the late 390s, early 380s. It is obvious that the burial complex should be dated back to the 380s. Burial number 78, the amphora of Mende is referred to the early series. It is important for us that one of its handles stamped with an epigraphy in the form of a 4-petal anaglyphic rosette. A Thasian amphora with a heavily worn out stamp on the handle was discovered together with it. A single valid recreation of the legend is difficult, but the names of magistrates Leonie, Mnemeus, Teles can be expected here, and all of them refer to the late 390s, the early 380s. Taking into account the dating of the amphora of faces, the Mendean vessel should be dated to the 380s. Burial number 154, the Mendean amphora is clearly qualified as the early series. The Heraclean amphora with a heavily washed off anaglyphic stamp with a retrograde legend Herodor de Namaha, known from the Debelt finding, was discovered together with it. In this case, we are dealing with the magistrate de Nomachos of the 370s. Next, two burials. Here you can see the Mendean vessels together with the Thasian amphora, which have the stamps where Megan II is the magistrate, usually dated to the late 360s, early 350s. Burial number 346. Here, a Sinopian amphora and a black-glazed salt cellar were found along this Mendean amphora. The unstamped Sinopian amphora is of the conical type. Morphologically similar amphora are known with the stamps of the early Sinop magistrates of the late second quarter to the middle of the 4th century. The closest analogy is an amphora from well number 269 in Gargipia with the stamp of the earliest anonymous Nicomedes, which is dated to the late 350s, 340s. Burial number 126. The Mendean amphora has a relief round stamp in the form of the letter F on the handle. The Thasian biconical amphora found with it has a stamp on the handle. Only the plough emblem is visible in it. According to Alexander Avram, the magistrate Aristotle appears to have such an emblem. In the work of Ivan Garland, the magistrate mass Nymphon Archestratos, whose activities were within a wide chronological framework, appeared to use it. And finally, on this slide, you can see the results of grouping of amphora of Mende of the Melitopol variant according to the complexes discussed above, with the addition of other amphora from the burials of the Prikubanskiy necropolis. Thus, in these materials of the Kuban necropolis, 76 Mendean amphora were recorded, of which 47 copies were discovered in complexes with other import groups. In general, the conclusion made more than 20 years ago confirms that the production of Porticella variant amphora is not limited to the first decades of the 4th century. Currently, we can confidently report that these variant containers existed until the middle of the century, coexisting with the vessels of the Melitopol variant since the 380s. The transformation of the vessel's morphology is clearly in evidence of the Prikubanskiy necropolis materials. As for the Melitopol variant amphora, at present it is obvious that they did not change the Porticella variant, but were produced in parallel with the first ones for some times, at least from the 380s. The complexes of burials number 157 and 172 of the Prikubanskiy necropolis are illustrative of this. Unfortunately, restricted chronological complexes that could be dated to the 330s, 320s are missing from the Prikubanskiy materials. However, based on the materials of the Melitopol kurgan and the August kurgan, we know that the production of containers in Mende continued at this time. It is also obvious that the Mendean import was delivered to the Maeotians of Prikubanskiy region most intensively in the 400-340s. Afterwards, is drastically reduced. Only one Mendean amphora of the following conical variant from the burial number 46 can be dated to the 330s on the basis of analogies. The vessel is not considered in this report. The case of the Mendean containers complicated rather by the fact that the amphora of the Melitopol variant appears to be of amazing variety in the rims and tooth profiling, and the clay structure is noticeably different, which was paid attention to a long time ago. In this circumstance, we cannot help disagreeing with the assumption of the simultaneous production of such amphora in several centers according to a single standard. At the same time, it is rather difficult to imagine how vessels with such identical morphology of the body were produced in different centers. Thank you for your attention.
Great, thank you very much for that very clear and useful presentation.